Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of The Soul of a Story, where writers talk about why they write what they write. And I'm very, very excited and happy and grateful to introduce you to my first guest, a fellow Vine Leaves Press author, um, very accomplished writer, very interesting, creative person, Nina Lichtenstein.
Hi
How are you,
there.
Nina? How are
I'm
you?
I'm great, and I'm so excited to be your inaugural guest.
I know. I'm the one who's excited, but we were just our little pre-talk here. I think you're really going to enjoy, guess what Nina's going to say. It's going to go perfectly with this ongoing kind of journey I'm doing with this. But Nina, first and foremost, where are we beaming into you from? Where are you right now?
I live in Maine, United States, and I say United States because I was not born or raised in the US. I was born and raised in Oslo, Norway.
Oh,
So English is actually my second language,
okay.
but I have lived in the US since I was about 20 years old, and I'm not gonna be coy about my age. I just turned 60. So it's a long time in an Anglo world, and hence almost all my writing is in English.
Well, I am not going to be coy either. I'm 25 years old. No, I'm 61, Nina. I got you by a year, so this is good.
Thank
So I
goodness.
get it. I get it. So Maine is a beautiful, beautiful place. Um, you've been in Maine the whole time since you've been in America, or is it what?
Yeah, no, I actually came to Connecticut as an au pair girl, also
Okay.
known as a nanny. And the
Uh-huh.
intention was to have a gap year between high school and university. But man plans and God laughs, right? Uh,
Or
so,
cries. Yeah.
yeah, and so 1 year has somehow turned into 40. I fell in love with an American while I was here and ended up marrying him and raising a family in Connecticut and only moved to Maine about 10 years ago.
Okay, 10. Well, I love Connecticut too. Where in Connecticut were you?
West Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends up there. Pretty, very North Country up there.
Yeah, although to me, I'll tell you, John, everything is relative. I actually think Connecticut is like way too south for me, too warm in the summer, too humid in the summer.
Right.
Um, and I also, so for me, coming to Maine, actually, with its mere 1 million inhabitants,
Uh-huh.
felt kind of like coming home to
Oh,
Norway,
sweet.
because of the coastline, the fir trees, the longer winters,
Oh,
all that stuff. Yeah.
how nice, how nice. And I was gonna ask you about Norway. So you grew up in Oslo? Is that where you grew up?
Grew up in Oslo, right in town. My parents used to call us, and this is just them being, goofy, but they used to call us um, asphalt rats because we tried a couple of years in the suburbs with a garden and everything, and it just didn't work. So they moved us all back to the city, after a failed suburban
Uh-huh.
attempt.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
I was gonna say that was great name for a band, the Asphalt Rats, because I love the Boomtown Rats. That's my
Yeah.
um well, I have a great friend who lives in Norway, Andre, and I one of my dreams is to visit there. I hear it's just beautiful. Um, I love fjords. I love the whole idea. My dream one day is to go have reindeer pull me around. Do they have reindeer in Norway?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah. So now's a good time to go because actually the dollar is very strong compared to the
Oh, good,
Norwegian kroner. So
good.
it's still an expensive country because minimum wages
Right.
are much higher than here, and it's socialized medicine and all that. So it's an expensive country to both visit and live in. But now's a good time to do it. And I will tell you one more thing, which is that I have three adult sons, young adult sons, and my youngest son is moving to Norway next week.
Oh, how
Yeah.
nice. Here's a what's the biggest difference between someplace like Maine and Norway? Not just culturally, but physically. like like geographically, you say there's a lot of similarities, but what's the difference you see, or what's the biggest difference you see in
That's so
our area?
interesting. Well, it's not a fair comparison really because I grew up in Oslo and Oslo is a capital and
Uh-huh.
relatively speaking, a big city. I mean, relatively speaking, nothing like New York, of course. And in Maine, there's only like 1 million people, and in Norway, there's like 5.5 million now.
Wow.
So clearly that's a difference. And it's really so interesting. I never have spent a lot of time thinking about the difference between Norway and Maine, other than, of course, the language and
Mm.
food culture.
Right.
Um, yeah, you know, it's something I'm gonna have to think more about. It's so funny because I think psychologically it means that my emotional goal is to feel comfortable and happy here. And
Oh, I
so
like that.
I'm like focusing in on like uh because I miss Norway and I didn't really
Mhm.
intend to leave Norway. It's
Sure,
just
sure,
that,
sure.
love happens.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's beautiful. I love that emotional goal. I miss Norway too, and I never been there. So how's that? I have to ask you because see, I grew up in a very cold. I grew up near Buffalo and Rochester, New
oh
York,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
I grew up ice fishing. Do you ice fish? Have you ever? Do you know? Does
I
your family ice fish?
No, so as I told you, we were asphalt rats. No.
Hard to ice fish in the pavement, right?
In the payment. No, but we had a boat. Most Norwegians actually either have a boat or a cabin, either by the ocean or in the mountains. Um, and sometimes they're not fancy at all. They're just small, little, no electricity, no running water, but
Mm,
it's a very popular, common thing. It was almost strange that I grew up and our family didn't have a cabin, but we
mm.
had a boat. But we didn't go on the boat in the winter. All this to say is that I have never ice fished because I'm petrified to go on the ice on the water.
That's probably
Because
smart.
when I grew up,
Yeah,
kids fell through the ice,
yeah.
when we ice skated on lakes and ponds. And I just like have a little bit of a compulsion not to go on the ice.
Well, it's probably a good component. My father was the one who always would drag me along ice fishing, all that. And I was real skinny. I'm not like I am now. I was real skinny when I was little. And my mother was always worried that I'd go right down a hole. So
Ooh.
I know, I know.
But
Now
my
you'd
husband,
have to make a
I'll
big hole now for me to get down.
my husband, my second husband, who is a Mainer, who grew up here, he went hunting
Oh,
and ice fishing
I love ice fishing.
growing up. So.
Um, so tell me a little bit about your writing life. So when did you first start writing? And before we actually ask you the specific question about a specific story, but give me the broad brushstrokes of you and your
Yeah.
relationship with writing.
Yeah, I'll say that contrary to many writers who tell stories of their origins as writers, like fervent journaling as young kids or teenagers, and perhaps also avid readers,
Yeah,
under the covers with a flashlight instead of being out socially.
right.
I was not that kid.
Hmm.
I now have figured out and understand reasons why that was, but I was outside causing havoc and getting into trouble and running around the neighborhood.
Oh, nice.
And my reading as a teenager was essentially like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Um, but as a later teenager, when I had strong emotions about stuff, I would write like letters to the editor of the teenage magazine in
Uh-huh.
Norway at the time. And that was sort of like, became like a way to vent
Mm,
emotions, or let's just say what I like to say now, metabolize experience and
nice.
emotions. And actually there were quite I almost had like a letter like every month, that was printed in the magazine. Um, but the fact of the matter is that when I moved to the States, I pursued a higher degree in French literature and a lot of reading. and a lot of
Mm,
writing. The degree went from a bachelor's to a master's to a PhD. So in that course, you can imagine there's a lot of writing
yeah,
and a lot of reading,
right.
um, which actually blows my mind that I, who had such spilkes, or as we say in Norwegian, fleas in my blood, right? I just
Oh,
couldn't stand
nice.
still that I somehow pursued this path of a lot of sitting and a lot of reading and a lot of papers and eventually obviously a dissertation, and
Yeah,
thankfully that dissertation turned into a book.
yeah.
So um I think because I grew up and I was as a child a little bit of a troublemaker who got into trouble quite a bit, as I evolved into a teenager and young adult, I also learned how to please adults.
Mm,
And the pleasing personality, which can be exhausting at times,
mm-hmm,
involved doing really good in school and sort of pursuing the things where I did really well, which was
mm,
languages and writing eventually. And so now I call myself a recovering academic because I left academia
yeah.
exactly during a time when I had a very extreme need to metabolize those emotions
Mm,
that I was having. I was going through a divorce, and I started writing personal essays, and many of them were published and found
wow.
readers. And I'm like, oh, I like this. And I also actually will say that in that time of my life and sort of alternating between academic writing and personal writing or creative nonfiction, as we call it,
Hmm,
I discovered a more authentic voice, a more authentic writing voice that I enjoyed more.
mm,
So that was part of the decision I made to pursue then an MFA.
mm-hmm,
Um, and you don't need to have an MFA in order to be a good writer, as we all know. But
right.
since English is my second language, it felt to me like a wise step in the
Mm,
process of becoming more
yeah,
comfortable with creative writing.
yes,
Yeah, and also for the sake of community, like building a creative writing community versus
yeah,
sort of the academic community that I came from. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Wow, that was such a I love you're so insightful about your own self and the process and all that. It's really wonderful. No, because you're articulate about it, but it's how do I say this? I it takes a while to get to that point where you can answer that question.
Well,
You know,
I'll
yeah.
tell you what that while was. It was writing this book.
Yeah. Well, good.
That
See?
I mean that my
Hmm.
sister kind of rolls her eyes at this whole idea of writing about yourself and your own life. She's like, you know, and I come back to I think it was Socrates perhaps who said, to live an unexamined life, is not really
That's
worth
right.
it. Like
That's right.
that holds value. And so the value for me is just sort of understanding myself, which in turn, I think, makes me also able to have more empathy and understanding of others. I mean,
That's
that's the
right.
hope. But it's not
No,
just like navel gazing.
right. No, not at all. No, it's beautiful. I related a few times, especially the MFA, because I went and got mine. I was like about 30. And what you were talking about reading, the thing I found most beneficial as a writer was all the reading they made me do. And
Yeah.
rereading books that you had to read when you're in high school, but really reading with a different focus and an eye, and so that really helped me. And also being with other writers
Hmm.
who are ambitious, who are
Hmm.
serious, because in life, it's much better now, but when I was running around trying to be a writer and all that, you're a little bit shamed about it, and you still
Mm.
had that thing, well, you're going to make money and all that.
Mm.
And when all of a sudden I got into a room, into a class, and students and lots of people who are like fighting for that same thing, and it really made me feel, you know, that I was in the right joint. And
It's validating
yeah,
also.
so it doesn't have to be an MFA, but I recommend any writers, like, one, own it. If
Hmm.
you're a writer, say you are. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Don't be, and the other thing is to get in a community, be it a group, a writing group, a class, or whatever. Get into a community where
Yeah.
others are sort of So when you said that, that hit me. And
Yeah.
but I love you have all these little great little lines, these catch lines. You know what I mean? Um, so I think it's a really nice journey. And my last thing I'll say is, about understanding. Orwell said he's got this little great essay called "Why I Write," Orwell.
Mm,
And I always, sometimes I'll have young people talk to me or whatever. Well, I'm not really a writer. And I'll bring out Orwell's essay and I say, let's go through it like a diagnostic test,
mm,
almost like putting in a thing. And one of his things is you have something to say. We have something to
mm,
say. We like
mm.
words. There's a lot of things, and usually that, oh yeah, I guess I am a writer. So we do have something that we want to share, a
Yeah,
wisdom. But I say writers do it, good writers like yourself and all that, they put it like the medicine in a little sugar, right?
right,
So you got
right,
this great new book. We're going to talk about that. And you do it and you present it in a way like, wisdom and all that, but you're not lecturing. It's a story. And so it's
right.
like it's giving the medicine. So that everything you said really hit me just right.
Mm, mm. Well, I mean, in terms of just this, like finding the soul of the story,
Yeah.
whatever story it may be an article in the newspaper or a reported story, it doesn't have to be a short
Yeah.
story or a personal
Right.
essay. But sometimes a story doesn't really have a soul, and and those become, I believe, the stories that we don't remember,
Yeah.
that don't really touch us in any
Hmm.
sort of
Right.
way.
Right.
And so that's in and of itself a sort of a cool concept to,
Oh,
you
it's a
know,
wonderful. No, I'm so glad you brought that up. Nina, there's a rule. You can't be wiser than the host. So, this is
ha,
you're
okay,
breaking all
bye.
the No, that was really beautiful. Well, let's segue into this sort of like this new theme. So, a soul of a story. So I'm kind of, interested in the spark, what caused a writer to write a certain thing, or this story I wrote this or this book. And you have this great book, Body, My Life in Parts. And I started reading it. It's just really smart and creative. And our publisher is fantastic, so they were smart to take you. And I read a little something how you got the idea or whatever when you were going to the bathroom one night. So we start from there and I think you're going to share a little bit of it with us. So I'll just
Sure.
let you roll from there and say if I'm right or wrong or whatever, but give us sort of the how it started.
I think what's interesting is that, there's a spark, and our sparks, as far as being writers, and I'm sure you have the same experience in writing a fiction, which is what
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
written. Is that that spark happens in the most strange and unpredictable times and places. We could be sitting in a line at the gas station, or, overhearing a conversation in a cafe or whatnot. Um, and for me, it was a very pedestrian moment of needing to run to the bathroom in the middle of the night and discovering a real, like a excruciating pain in my hip, the kind that
Hmm.
makes you yelp in pain and
Oh.
sort of limp your way down the hall. And the timing, of course, of this pain matters because it was my first semester in my MFA program. I had a packet of 20 pages due within a week. I had no idea what I was going to write about
Hmm.
because, contrary to many MFA students, I did not come to the program with a specific project in mind. I just wanted to become better at writing in general. And amazing things happen when you have a spark and a deadline.
Hmm.
Like deadlines really do wonders for me.
They sure
And
do.
so I made some notes on a little piece of paper next to the bed, but also my very monkey mind started racing, wondering, why do I have this pain? Do I have cancer?
Hmm.
I mean, that's sort of like, you
Yeah.
know, um, the older we get, the more of our people,
Yes.
have fought with this beast, and some lose the battle. And so that had happened with a friend. So I was pretty dramatic about it in the initial takes. Um, and then saying, I'm going to write about this. Like, let's write to this pain and to this hip.
Hmm.
And then I started doing some research, perhaps for medical reasons. But then I discovered um, the poet Lucille Clifton read a poem of hers called Homage to My Hips. And it was a
Oh,
recording of her reading it on YouTube. And
wow.
I was
Wow.
like, oh, will you look at that? Like something lyrical and really and funny
Hmm.
and really meaningful about a body part. And so that
Hmm.
kind of lit the fire a little bit, I would say, right? I submitted the 20 pages. It was about my hips. You know, it ended up actually being one of the smaller chapters in the book.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think I thank my, I don't think that I thank her, but I do thank my mentor for that first semester because when she returned the packet to me in big letters on the top, give me more of this.
Oh, and that affirming. Yeah.
And so there you go. So I was like, okay, well, and I started just building on body parts and submitting essays, essentially packets, um, where I decided to use, I sort of discovered with that initial packet writing about my hips that you can actually recover memories and scenes and stories from your life that I wouldn't otherwise necessarily have been able to remember.
Oh,
Um,
that's.
because I sort of meditated with that body part and the experiences that that part of my body had gone through
Hmm.
so far in my life. And when I sat down and did this kind of methodically, with each body part, these stories just like poured out of me. And some of
Hmm.
them may be stories that I've retold to friends and family and my kids over the years. But of course, as you know well, and as writers know, once you sit down and you start to um, and you start to uh, verbalize or write creatively, our stories sometimes take a very different turn or a different shape than when we tell them
Hmm.
or orally, right? Uh,
Yes.
that's what the creative part is about creative nonfiction or
Yes.
fiction.
Yes.
Um, and that part gave me a lot of pleasure.
Hmm.
And that's where I would say sometimes I wonder if the PhD in French literature was like a waste of my life and a waste of my time because I
No.
ended up not working in that field for long. And so I knew and I know when I write that all those years of reading all that amazing literature, albeit in French, has sort of fed my writerly sensibility and my aesthetics, if you will,
Hmm.
with poetics that I would, of course, not otherwise have felt in my
Right.
sort of kishkis. So that is where the pleasure of writing for me
Yeah.
came from. And then, of course, the fact that the body parts, I know them. They're my own. They're my own.
That's right. That's
they're
right.
they're so original, yet
Yeah.
the story of our body parts is so universal because
Yes.
we all have them.
Yes, we do.
So
Yes.
it's not
Yes.
unique to me. The story, may be unique to me, but the body part and the fact that you and I and all people have stories unique to their own life experience through this or that body part is something that a lot of people can appreciate. And maybe
Oh, yeah.
even I loved how one blurber, Abigail Thomas, she said, and she's in her 80s, and she said, she's kind of like the matriarch of the personal essay and memoir for us memoir writers.
Uh-huh.
And she said, I no longer can go through my day in the same way because I've become aware of,
Hmm.
from Nina's book, like the stories and my body parts are more than just a
Oh,
functional
nice.
thing that can open, a drawer or walk to the mailbox or light a
Mm-hmm.
cigarette.
God, what a
Uh,
great compliment.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's how the book happened
Well,
and
I
yeah.
love it. I mean, it's just perfect for this series. You know what I mean? Because in such a small moment, and it became, and I always say writing is about relating. Good writing, you want to relate. You want your reader to relate. And immediately, I have a fake hip. I got a
Huh.
hip replacement a year ago, and a friend of mine who got the same thing would call me up. It's gonna be great. It's gonna, and I really bonded with him over that. And the
Mm.
process of healing, you think about things, but the mind body is so connected.
Mm-hmm.
And with injuries and things like this, there's so much emotional suppression there. So like I can see what, so I think, each chapter must be someone else going, I got that. You know what I mean? And then you use it as this wonderful touchstone. So it's a highly relatable. And so that's I can see why there's this good reaction to the book.
And for instance, if you were to read my I chapter, for example, eyes, of course, you're not gonna necessarily relate to the young girl I was in Oslo in the 1970s,
Yeah.
or but you're gonna remember perhaps or think about when was a time, when I was young, when I didn't feel seen, or
Mm.
I witnessed something that I shouldn't have seen,
Oh,
things like that, right? And
I love
so
that. I love that.
one of my most happy things to hear is when people say that my writing sparked something in them, which in turn makes them remember something or feel
Hmm.
the urge to tell a story about something that
Isn't
is
that nice?
related to a body part. Yeah.
No, that's the best. That's the best.
Oh,
Wow. Well, I'm um I'm really excited by this book, and I'm
good.
looking forward to reading more and more and more. I hope I don't get another hip, but if I do now, I know it's going to be okay. So,
And
it'll
also, you know that the whole concept of narrative medicine is
mm,
is is like scientifically proven, you
yeah,
know, a way to help heal.
that's
And
right.
it doesn't need to be a big, big, traumatic, horrible, chronic disease thing, for
Yes.
even everything relating to our body and the need to heal, and also, of course, our emotional selves. Um, Writing is really a
Yeah.
valuable.
No, it is. No, I'm glad you said that. And going back to, you were talking about your PhD in French literature, and then you found out later, well, this was what, it's one of my great things I say all the time. Not a great thing, but I think it's great. Is I always tell students and all that, there's not a, because the prevailing thing people say, well, there's a reason for everything. There's a reason for everything. There's a reason
We
why.
like we
But
like
I,
to.
I, I like to change it to, we put reason to everything.
Mm,
Instead of there's a reason for everything, we put the
mm,
reason to, and
mm,
to do that, it has to have a little time.
mm,
So it's so funny. You took this and you were like, well, maybe it wasn't worth it because I wasn't a T. But then later, ah,
mm,
and so you put the reason to it. And I think people who are successful, who share, who are happy, who are able to survive and cope, that is a mechanism.
mm,
They see their past lives and things they've done, and they don't regret it. They say, well, this was why.
mm.
And I think
That's cool.
writing is a really good way to pull that out. So kudos
Love
to
it.
you. So do
Yeah,
you have a little something to share? Do you have something from the book you can read us a little
sure.
bit?
I love to read from the book, and I try sometimes to plan my reading based on sort of the audience, or
Okay.
sometimes, like, if I'm in a group of all middle-aged or above women, I pick, or if I'm in a
Okay.
group that's specifically, like, I had a reading in Norway when I was home in September, and it was a Norwegian audience. I read in English because the book is in English, but
Right.
I picked some pieces that I knew would resonate with them, things about growing up in Norway and things like that, and also about my conversion to Judaism, because for most Norwegians, that's a very sort of mysterious and strange and different thing to imagine. So,
Hmm.
I try often um, to not always read the same thing, to
Right.
be a little, um,
Right.
and the reason I suggested reading from the Eyes chapter, which I alluded to earlier about
Yeah.
being young and how we remember being seen or seeing, um, is because you and I had talked about my meeting with Liv Ullmann, the
Right.
actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm going to read from this chapter called Eyes. And just to say that each chapter has usually several smaller stories. And so this is one of the stories from the
Okay.
Eyes chapter. All
Great.
right. And each chapter also starts with a little, it's called an epigraph, isn't it? The
Okay.
little on the I always forget if it's an epigraph. The
We'll
little
call it
quote at the top of the. Can't believe I don't know that. But
that. I
anyway,
don't know it either. Okay.
it's a quote by Henry David Thoreau, who
Okay.
said, "It's not what you look at, it's what you see."
Nice.
My best friend Anne, whom I grew up with in Oslo and whom I've known since first grade, always reminds me I have what she calls sorry eyes. I
Mm,
know exactly what she means because I can see it and recognize that melancholy look, even when I'm neither blue nor happy, but just neutral in mood. Ever since I was a teen, people have told me I look like the Norwegian actress Liv Ullmann. She has big time sorry eyes too, reminiscent of a basset hound's sad expression.
mm,
I used to hate the idea that I might resemble Liv Ullmann because she was known for the gloomy and depressed characters she portrayed. Her ex-husband, the iconic film director Ingmar Bergman, knew how to work with her downhearted aura in her early film successes, like The Emigrants from 1971 and Scenes from a Marriage from 1973. But
mm,
the fact that I didn't like being told I resembled Norway's most well-known actress sticks deeper than looks. Leave's daughter, Lynn, went to the same elementary and middle school as Anne and I, and she also lived on our street with her mother and Mrs. Moe, their
mm,
housekeeper. Lynn was possessive of Anne and came between us. I felt that I couldn't compete since Lynn and her mother led what I thought was a glamorous lifestyle, inviting Anne to join them in exotic and faraway places like New York City, Italy, and the Caribbean. When we'd hang out and have play dates, I was the third wheel. Not seen, it was as if I didn't exist.
mm,
One incident stands out. Three lanky middle schoolers. We were in Lynn and Leave's sprawling Oslo apartment with high ceilings and huge rooms connected by generous archways. They even had a fireplace in the kitchen and a sauna in the far end of a lushly carpeted hallway that went on forever. Lynn took Anne into her bedroom to play and locked the door while I was left in the dark and quiet hallway. I think I cried, or at least moped, as I wandered down the hall. When I got to the living room, I discovered Liv sitting on the sofa. I knew she was famous, so the moment I spotted her had some of that should I even look at her hesitation. I peeked timidly in her direction. Was she smoking a cigarette?
mm,
In my mind's eye, I see an oversized, rust-colored corduroy sectional, a 1970s floor lamp craning its long stainless steel neck over a low square marble coffee table. A large round white glass globe is suspended mid-air, a moon within reach. The star sat below the moon, shrouded in a cloud of smoke.
mm,
Hello there, a gentle voice said. Hi, I said, hyper aware that a real life celebrity was addressing me.
mm,
She was enigmatic to me because she seemed like such a regular person there on the couch. I also didn't understand how she was so legendary when all I had heard was my parents talk about how they didn't think she was a good actress and that they found Bergman's films dark and depressing. My parents were looking for entertainment, not films with not films without satisfying endings about complex, gloomy lives. You seem a bit unhappy. What's going on? She asked.
mm,
They locked the door and won't let me in, I answered, feeling weird about telling on them. I don't
mm,
care about them, she said. You can sit here with me and ignore how they're behaving. She smiled at me with her forlorn eyes that only intensified my self pity. but it
mm,
also felt good to be noticed by somebody, and
mm,
not just anybody.
mm,
I plopped down on the far side of the couch, stealing furtive glances at the star, then gazed around the spacious room. Large and colorful abstract oil paintings adorned the walls, nothing like the small paintings and prints we had at home. There might have been a glass of juice, or maybe I was offered a soda.
mm,
I was used to secondhand cigarette smoke from home, so while hers may have drifted slowly around our heads, trailing like a mysterious floating blanket, it would not have bothered me. Perhaps we just sat there in silence, me feeling awkward but relevant because I had been invited in to a sort of communion.
mm,
As rejected and invisible as Lynn and Ad made me feel, the intimacy Leave offered by letting me sit so casually close to her turned the experience from one of agonizing adolescent ache into a memory of, I think I'd like to call it redemption.
mm,
I wasn't alone or scorned, but instead joined and seen in my isolation by someone kind who accepted me and maybe even understood me. A famous person to boot.
mm,
Like Liv Ullmann, I have blue eyes, blonde eyebrows, and eyelashes, as well as high Nordic cheekbones. I see our shared features better now that I'm an adult. As an adolescent girl, I didn't think Liv was beautiful, and I wonder how much of my opinion about her was shaped by overhearing my parents' critique of her talent and of my feelings toward her daughter for stealing my best friend. Today, I look at photos of the young Liv Ullmann posing with Ingemar Bergman and Lynn, their scrawny, tow-headed girl, and I think, gosh, Liv was so beautiful.
mm,
Ullmann's beauty revealed itself to me as I matured, and it's quite possible it was her compassion that day in the 1970s that was the beginning of this evolution in what I see when I look at her image today. Perhaps what planted itself in an early experience of kindness took hold and grew into my own personal conviction of how important it is to validate the other's presence by truly seeing and acknowledging her, not just looking. Ullman saw me in a moment when I felt unseen, and
mm.
this in turn validated my being. My body remembers this moment.
Oh, God, what a really beautiful reading. Um, I got swept into that. That was really gorgeous. I'm gonna look up Liv Ullmann now continuously.
Yeah.
So much I like
She's
about
in
it.
her 80s now, so you know.
I'm sure she's still extraordinary. It's well, it's not the outward beauty, it's the inward. She seems so nice and really, I love the image. I like so much about this writing. I love the little details because I always talk about writing too. It's what you choose to put
Right,
in. Even though it's true, it's fictionalized in the way that you're painting a picture again. It's sort of like, and so the smoke, the cigarette smoke coming up, so you do this really nice job of balancing, and it makes dramatic what happened more. And then you really don't. It's my 101. The medicine comes out at the end,
right.
about being seen and all that, but it's
Mhm.
not a lecture. It's not an adult saying
Right,
you have to. It's
right.
it's given to the world on a beautiful story, so it means more. So well done.
Thank you. You know, I will say this about the creative part of writing nonfiction is exactly what you pointed to, is that the little Nina back in the 1970s, of course, does not remember
Yeah,
exactly what Liv Ullmann's living room looked like,
exactly.
or the color of the couch, or even if
Exactly.
she actually was smoking.
That's
And
right.
that's what part of when I also teach, writing. Um, but what if I don't remember? What if I don't exactly know? So
Yeah,
this is where the tricks of saying perhaps, or I think I remember, or it might have been,
that's right.
and that gives you
Right.
that. What's it called? The artistic freedom
That's right.
to,
Yeah,
uh,
it's
you
not
know,
journal. I get that too. Students, I want to write about my dad. I want to write a story about my dad, but I don't know how to make it fiction. I said, well, your father comes down every day and has toast with butter, and in your story he has toast with jam. It's fiction,
Yeah,
so
that's right.
but
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, it's good writing. It's just, you have such a, I can see a command and sensitivity, and it doesn't come easy because you got to think these things deep to get it out. And then I get a sense of gratitude here, which I always find very enriching.
I will also tell you that there were times during the editing of my book, I had a developmental edit um, early on,
Hmm.
before I started submitting it
Yeah.
and looking for a publisher, that something, because I had the academic background, which always, goes from like thesis, hypothesis, and then there's that dialectic, and you have a conclusion, always a conclusion, right? I had a tendency to want to wrap things up neatly with a bow.
Yeah.
And often, there's no need for that because the
No.
story has actually, in creative writing specifically, has given that nugget,
Yeah. Yeah.
by the virtue of the writing, and that you don't need that last paragraph when you sort
No.
of, like you say, give the lesson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that has been work for me
Yeah. Sure.
to often I end up writing and then I go, okay, now I'm going to remove the last paragraph and see where it stands.
That that's why writing is such a great thing for older older people. Anyway, because you never get it right. It's always going to be another
Always.
thing. It's a
Yeah.
it's a lifetime pursuit. Well, I enjoyed that so much, and I really your whole um, passion and ethos and philosophy, very grounded person. And Norway, even though you're an asphalt rat, I consider you now a person of
Mm.
the world and nature. And I really want to thank you, as I couldn't ask for a better first guest for this series. So,
Thanks
and
for having me.
I recommend and I order everyone out there listening to get Nina's book. She's got many books, but this book, Body, My Life in Parts, Vine Lee's Press. I'll put a link on this when I send it out. So,
It's
I
also,
think,
I just the audiobook just became available.
and
So
you
I
just
recorded
Well, and you
my,
just heard what a beautiful reader she is. So, it's a nice book. If you have body parts, you'll like it, and you have an emotional part. So, I recommend that. So, thank you.
thanks, Sean.
So, if you like what you like today, subscribe. We're going to do a lot of these. And if it's anything like today, you're going to get a lot out of it, writers or non-writers. And thank you so much, Nina.
Thanks for
And
having me. I
and
feel
go
really
go I
honored.
go ice fishing today, but do it on go take your rod and reel and go out to the pavement and pretend you're fishing on the road. That's okay.
Yeah, no, not me. I'll go
Okay.
skiing though.
Go skiing. Go skiing.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Bye. Bye bye
Thank you
bye
so
everyone.
much.
Thank you people.